Assalamu alaikum, grade 9, it's Miss Saja. We're going to continue our chapter about the transportation and distribution of nutrients and oxygen to the organs. Today we're going to be discussing activity 2, blood vessels and the dynamics of circulation. In this video, we're going to be discussing the comparison of the structures of the veins to an artery and capillaries, and we're going to identify the types of circulation. Now, let's first remember what is the main function of the heart. Remember, the heart, it's a hollow muscular organ that is responsible to pump the blood around the circulatory system, and it is composed of specialized cells called the myocardium. Now, what are the different types of blood vessels? Remember, the blood vessels connected to the heart are the superior and inferior vena cava. We have the pulmonary vein coming from the lungs. Remember, pulmo means lungs. And we have the aorta, and the pulmonary artery is carrying blood away from the heart. So the types of blood vessels are arteries, veins, and capillaries. Now, let's look at the characteristics of the artery. Now, the first thing that you have to remember is that the arteries, they're actually responsible to carry blood away from the heart. So the aorta and the pulmonary artery carry blood away. Other characteristics of the arteries include thick elastic wall and a small lumen. Now, with the high pressure of the blood being pumped by the heart, the thick elastic wall ensures that the walls of the artery do not rupture, do not explode, and the small lumen ensures that the pressure of the blood is actually maintained inside the artery. Now, let's look at the characteristics of the veins. First of all, we need to know that veins carry blood back towards the heart. So we have the inferior and superior vena cava carrying blood back from the body, so deoxygenated blood from the body to the heart, and we have the pulmonary vein carrying oxygenated blood back from the lungs. Other characteristics of veins include thin walls with little elastic walls and a large lumen. Now, the reason for this is to ensure that the blood is transported efficiently towards the heart against gravity, and the blood movement usually is slow. Veins also can contain something called valves. They have the same function as the valves in the heart. They prevent the backflow of the blood. So here we can see the valves. They prevent the backflow of the blood. So remember, the blood is moving against the gravity, so the gravity is pulling the blood downwards, and the blood is moving upwards through the vein, going back to the heart. So the valves prevent the backflow of the blood. Let's look at the characteristics of the capillary. So the characteristics of a capillary include that it delivers blood to and away from cells. It usually has very thin walls, meaning that it's made of walls that are only one cell thick. It's responsible for nutrient and gas exchange due to the thin walls. It has a very slow blood pressure, which allows this exchange to happen. In this slide, we see a comparison between the three main types of blood vessels. So we have the artery, the vein, and the capillaries, and here we have different characteristics. For example, transport of blood. So remember, the arteries, they carry the blood from the heart to the organs. In the veins, it's from the organs back to the heart, and the capillaries deliver the blood to the cells and away from the cells. Remember, arteries, they have a thick wall. So here you can see that the wall of the artery is actually composed of 3 layers, which give it a thick layer. While in the veins, even though it has similar three layers, except that the layers are much thinner when compared with the artery. Now, the walls of the capillary, remember, they're extremely thin. They're only one cell thick, and it is important to have a very thin wall because this allows the exchange of nutrients and oxygen, and also the exchange of the wastes. Now, the diameter of the artery is actually very narrow. This is very important to maintain the high speed of blood traveling through the arteries. However, the diameter of the vein is actually wider. This is because blood returning back to the heart actually travels much slower than it does in an artery, so that's why the diameter is thicker. And remember, here we have valves. Now, the diameter of the capillary seems to be very narrow, but in comparison to its size, it's actually large. This allows the blood to move very slowly through the blood capillary to enable the exchange of nutrients and the exchange of gases. Now, the pressure of blood, as we said, in the artery is very high, in the vein it's low, and in the capillary it's very low. So the blood is moving very slowly to allow the exchange of nutrients and gases. Now, the elasticity of the walls, the elasticity of the walls of the artery is actually very elastic. This allows, or this prevents, the arteries from rupturing due to the high pressure of the blood. In the vein, it's much more less elastic because we don't want the blood back flowing or flowing backwards due to the elasticity of the walls, and the capillaries, usually it's not elastic. Finally, the arteries do not have any valves. The veins, they do have valves, and they're important to prevent the backflow of the blood. Remember, the blood in the veins is usually moving against gravity, so gravity is pulling the blood downwards, and the blood is trying to travel upwards towards the heart. So the valves, they prevent the backflow of the heart. And finally, the capillaries do not contain any valves. Let's look at the organization of blood vessels. So remember, the blood is the organ responsible to pump the blood around the body. Arteries carry blood away from the heart. Arteries then branch out into smaller types of arteries known as arterioles. Arterioles then further branch out into capillaries. Capillaries deliver blood to cells. Then capillaries, again, they carry blood away from the cells, which branch into something called venules, and venules branch into veins, and the veins carry the blood back to the heart. So here we have a representation of the different types of blood vessels. So remember, here we have the direction of the blood. So it's moving from the artery, and realize how the color of the blood is changing. So from the artery, which is a thick structure, branching out into the arterioles, which branch out further into the capillaries. So remember, at the level of the capillaries, this is where the gas exchange and nutrient exchange is taking place. Then the capillaries, they're carrying away the deoxygenated blood, which branches out into the venules, and finally branching back into the thick structure known as veins to be carried back to the heart. So what is the major function of blood vessels? So remember, the heart is the organ responsible to pump blood around the body. Now, our circulatory system is actually divided into two major parts. The first part being connected to the lungs. This is where the gas exchange happens between our body and the external environment. This is known as pulmonary circulation. So remember, the word pulmo means lungs. The second part of our circulatory system is known as systematic circulation, and this is where the oxygenated blood, after it returns from the lungs, it's carried back to the rest of the body to supply it with oxygen, and then the deoxygenated blood returns to the heart to be pumped back to the pulmonary circulation, and the cycle happens again and again. So what is circulation? So circulation is the continuous flow of liquids around the body. So circulation, as we said, is divided into two parts. So pulmonary circulation, also known as small circulation, and systematic circulation, also known as the large circulation. So the pulmonary circulation, we have the heart. From the heart, the blood goes through the pulmonary artery. Remember, pulmonary means lungs. Artery is the blood vessel that carries blood away from the heart. Then it carries it to the lungs. Here, this is where the gas exchange happens. So oxygen is obtained from the air in the alveoli, and carbon dioxide passes into the alveoli to be excreted outside the body. Then the oxygenated blood is sent back from the lungs to the heart via the pulmonary vein. So remember, pulmonary means lungs, vein is the type of blood vessel that carries blood back to the heart. Thank you for listening. See you next time in another video. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Systematic circulation, remember, this is oxygenated blood that is pumped from the heart through the aorta to different organs of the body. Nutrients and oxygen are delivered and carbon dioxide is picked up, and the oxygenated blood is then finally returned to the heart. So here we have the heart. Remember, we have an artery called the aorta. Remember, arteries are responsible to carry blood away from the heart. So the aorta carries oxygenated blood from the heart to the different organs and tissues of the body, and then they are returned through the superior and inferior vena cava, which are a type of veins, back to the heart. So usually superior and inferior vena cava, they carry deoxygenated blood back from the body to the heart. So this is the systematic circulation.